Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Fireside Chat. I'm Stephanie Cummings. I'm one of your alderwomen here in the city. I also live in East Mountain, and I work right here in downtown.
I'm Ron Napoli Jr. I'm born in the city of Waterbury. I'm also on the Board of Aldermen with my colleague Stephanie Cummings.
We're thrilled to begin tonight's conversation, but before we start, I'd like to take a moment to recognize all of the community organizations which were instrumental in making tonight happen. The Greater Waterbury YMCA, the Mattatuck Museum, the Palace Theater, the Young Professionals through the Chamber, and the United Way Emerging Leaders Group. Additionally, I'd really like to thank D'Amelio's Restaurant, Jesse Camille's, and Nutmeg Fine Wine and Spirits for your generous support of tonight's event.
Mayor Neil O'Leary's career has been marked by deep commitment to Waterbury with a can-do attitude to effect positive change through collaboration and community building. He was born in the city of Waterbury. He is a graduate of Dean College and earned a degree in criminal justice from the University of New Haven. Mayor O'Leary also graduated from the 49th session of the FBI's Law Enforcement Executive Department Seminar. Mayor O'Leary joined the Waterbury Police Department in 1980 and rose through the ranks of becoming police chief in 2004. Chief O'Leary served that role until his retirement in 2009. In 2011, Neil O'Leary ran successfully for mayor of the city of Waterbury, taking office in December of 2011.
Tonight, it's our pleasure to welcome the Honorable Neil M. O'Leary, 46th Mayor of the City of Waterbury.
What are you guys going to do, take the comfortable chairs?
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I was just kidding with these guys. They get the comfortable chairs. First of all, I'm glad that Stephanie and Ron acknowledged the folks who coordinated this event. I, too, want to thank them for the opportunity to be here and speak in front of you all, and, of course, anyone who sponsored the event. Without you all here and your support, we wouldn't have all this beer and wine that I see flowing through the room, so maybe after I'm done working, I'll join you. So I was really excited to get this invitation because one of the things that has frustrated me over the last 4 years as mayor is trying to get people more involved in the community and government and stakeholdership, and to see some young professionals here like this here tonight, it's really inspirational for me because it's really, it just sends a message clearly that there's a lot of folks in the community who would like to be involved, get involved. And I think that we as a city have been somewhat neglectful in trying to recruit more people to be involved. So we've got some messages to send tonight. I hope they resonate with you well. One of the things that I would enjoy the most about this evening is that I would love to have a Q&A session or to be interrupted at any point in time with a raise of hand and a question. To me, that's what this should be all about. It should be kind of informal but very informative, so I'd love to hear from all of you. I'd like to recognize some elected officials who have taken the time out to be here tonight. We have our Minority Leader, Steve Giacomi, Alderman Francis Guerrero is here with us tonight, as well as Alderman Roger Sherman. I don't think I've left any elected officials out. And also, we also have a number of important people here from the community, and as we go along, we can hopefully recognize them as well. We put together a PowerPoint. We're trying to, I don't know how many of you are all that familiar with what's happened over the last 4 years, so we thought that would be a good starting point. We could talk about some of the things that we're proud of over the last 4 years. I don't have any timelines tonight, by the way. The dangerous thing about that is I can talk forever. So I will try to stay on point, but certainly, as I said to you, welcome any inquiries whatsoever. We didn't really go over any rules of the game. Do you guys want to moderate, or do you want to ask questions yourselves, or you want me to just start?
We figured we'd start with your presentation, that we do have some questions that were pre-submitted.
Okay, so focus up here on the PowerPoint, and we'll talk about where today's vision becomes tomorrow's reality. So one of the things that I've been most proud of is the partnership that we've developed over the last 4 years with the University of Connecticut downtown. Recognizing, Waterbury is quite an interesting story. So You might recall back when Governor Rowland was here as the governor, he infused about $220 million into downtown Waterbury. They built the UConn campus in downtown Waterbury, which, as many of you would know, is up around the Hillside neighborhood. And they brought that downtown, and they did the remarkable work on the Palace Theater. So we'll just focus on that right now. So that was going to be, right, the launch pad. That was going to be the send-off. We were going to bring all these kids into downtown Waterbury. We were going to have that beautiful Palace Theater, and that was going to be the beginning of the resurrection of downtown Waterbury. Sound familiar? So while the UConn campus is magnificent, and the Palace Theater is extraordinary, the problem is that after the governor left, the money dried up, and the vision kind of left with him. And so we were faced with disaster, right? 2001, we were taken over by a state oversight board. We were bankrupt. We were in serious trouble. Our bond rating went to junk bond status. Bad news. So climbing out of that, at that time I was the deputy police chief and then the police chief through the oversight board. And by the way, the oversight board should be and will continue to be remembered as doing great work here, having made extraordinarily difficult decisions and gone through incredible turmoil. But at the time, it was as bad as it was. Today, it's as good as it is. Their decisions enabled us to come back. They were difficult. They were painful. City employees were hit very, very, very hard. A lot of benefits that they were accustomed to had changed dramatically. The workforce changed. Many, many city employees retired, and it was a very difficult process. But one of the things that we, in 2011, when we got elected, was we tried to figure out a way to one of our main campaign themes was to try to revitalize downtown Waterbury once again. So you guys are really young. But back in the day, downtown Waterbury was the place to be. There were schools that surrounded downtown Waterbury. Holland Hughes was the center place of everything. When I was a child, everything revolved around Holland Hughes. You went in there for anything. Everything and anything you needed, you got at Holland Hughes. But the whole city itself was loaded with restaurants and bars and other establishments in downtown Waterbury. When I went on the police department in 1980, you saw the beginning, really legitimate beginning of the decline of downtown Waterbury. So my first 2 years or so on the department, I was assigned a walking beat in downtown Waterbury. So I was as familiar with downtown Waterbury as you possibly could be. And one business and one store after another started to close. And then, of course, when the Brass Mill Mall opened up, that took more businesses out of downtown Waterbury. So we're left with empty buildings and landlords who were just struggling just to pay their property taxes. In 2011, as I mentioned, when we came in, we said, you know what, let's start over again. And I'm not an urban planner. I'm not an expert planner. So we went out and we sought the advice of professional urban planners. I attended a seminar, a 3-day seminar at the University of Kentucky that I was invited to, and we really had a great 3 days out there. Prior to going to Lexington, Kentucky, the Planning Institute sent 2 urban planning experts to Waterbury for 2.5 days, and we went over the whole city, but particularly in downtown. So when we got out there, they said, look, you've got so many beautiful assets, especially in downtown Waterbury, but there's really no vision as to how to connect the dots. And I said, well, that's great, because that's really what I'm here for. So I hope you guys will wave your magic wand and we'll be off and running. They said you got to start with University of Connecticut. And so every day we have 1,200 students that come into the University of Connecticut during the day and some in the evening. And, basically students go to their classes and then they get in their cars and they go home. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out is how to get them to stay in downtown Waterbury. So we met quickly on with President Susan Herbst who is still the president of the University of Connecticut, and we've had an extraordinary relationship with her. And the one thing I'd like you to get out of tonight's thing, or many things, but one of the most important things, is you need to build relationships with the people that matter the most. Like them or not, you have to sit in a room with them and figure out a way to advance your mission. Now, by the way, I love Susan Herbst, and I think she likes me an awful lot, but at the end of the day, we built a great relationship with her, and I've met with her on many different occasions on planning for what's next in downtown Waterbury. One of the things that happened quickly is we ran out of space before we even started. And so the city of Waterbury in 2012 and 13 decided to go across the street to the Rectory building with the support of President Herbst and UConn. The Rectory building had been abandoned, had been blighted. The plan actually at one point was to call for it to be demolished and something else to be put there. We brought in some architects working with WDC, Waterbury Development Corporation. They said the place could be saved. It wasn't going to be any small task. We came up with a bunch of architectural plans and then subsequently some money through the state of Connecticut and the city of Waterbury and rebuilt the Rectory building with the understanding that University of Connecticut would lease the building from us, and that would pay down the debt service, or the mortgage, if you will. So that's what happened. We put $9 million into this building. It's magnificent. We just had the ribbon cutting recently. And the fact is the first floor will be Starbucks. There's a lease, I guess, that's just been signed. Starbucks is moving in. And by the way, that's our third Starbucks, which we're pretty proud of. Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why that, by the way, is so significant, if you do any research on Starbucks, they'll only go into cities that they think has a positive outlook. And so we're really pleased about that. So we got Starbucks in, and by the way, there's so many people involved in that great effort. I'd be remiss if I started mentioning anyone, but our state delegation had a lot to do with it. And then, of course, our Board of Aldermen saw the vision and signed on to it. But so Starbucks first floor, and University of Connecticut rents second, third, and fourth floor. I got a question.
Well, of course you got positive development, like where we are now. I live in Waterbury, all right? You're worried about the people coming to school and staying there. I think you need to be more worried about the people that are living in Waterbury and empowering them to eventually become small business owners, because that's what I see in my town, is that all these people grew up, went to school, became small business owners, now own successful businesses in Middlebury, therefore is successful.
Not that easy, but I'll get there, I promise. Okay, hold me to that question. Let me just continue on with the thought process here. So second, third, and fourth floor rented by the University of Connecticut. What does that mean? That means more student opportunities. That means more growth. University of Connecticut also signed on to expand their arts program with the Waterbury Arts Magnet School, which is directly across the street as well from UConn. So we're really happy about that, because now we have professors from the University of Connecticut actually working with high school students, and then students at the University of Connecticut working with our high school students as well. So that's important. So now, what do we need in downtown Waterbury to expand our relationship with the University of Connecticut? We explored Stamford, University of Connecticut, and Avery Point in New London, and we went to those locations, and we found that there is, although they're different than Waterbury, and we all would recognize that readily, we saw an awful lot of opportunities for students to live there. So, I don't know about you guys, and you might be just a little bit older than college age, but the fact is that when I was younger, there was no issue whatsoever getting into the University of Connecticut stores. Today, it's extraordinarily difficult to get into University of Connecticut stores as a freshman. As a matter of fact, it's pretty much unheard of. So, thankfully, and that's not the worst news in the world for Waterbury, New London, or Stamford, there are more and more students coming into these satellite campuses because they can't get into stores, yet University of Connecticut is still affordable. So we couldn't believe the number of housing opportunities and occupied housing at Stanford and Avery Point. So what we did is we did a survey through the University of Connecticut of the student population that attends there now on a daily basis. And well, it was pretty striking to me, but the demographics of the student population at the University of Connecticut now is, you've got about 25% of the students are Waterbury residents, but 75% are regional residents who come from towns like Middlebury and the surrounding towns where people have a little bit more cash on hand than they might for the typical Waterbury family. And so the survey asked, if given a really nice housing opportunity, would you consider moving into downtown Waterbury and attending the University of Connecticut? At the same time that was going on, we went to a place called Lowell, Massachusetts, which is a great town that's almost identical in so many different ways to the city of Waterbury. But what we learned in Lowell is that they have the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and there's an extraordinary amount of students who would have commuted in and out of Lowell had they not had housing. So Lowell did this major initiative, and they built these beautiful old factories into student housing. And it's really a magnificent place. We don't have some of the assets they have in Lowell, like a beautiful river that runs through the center of it, like in Providence, but we do have some opportunities that we thought we could expand upon. We went to Susan Herbst and said, if we can find people to invest private dollars into building housing for students, would you encourage your students to live in our housing? And she was great with us and said, of course I will. If you find the developers, we will push for our students to occupy those spaces. So the great news is we've very, very recently found a group of private developers with a lot of money who don't need any state assistance or federal assistance at all, who are buying properties in downtown Waterbury to convert into housing. Obviously, we believe strongly that we can have all the restaurants and bars and everything else we want, and that's all been tried in downtown Waterbury, but if we don't have people to support those establishments with money in their pockets, then it's going to be difficult to move forward. So we're feeling like we're on a very good track with these investors. By the way, they're excited because they went along to the meeting with Susan Herbst up at UConn, and she looked them right in the eye and said, if you build them, we'll fill them. And so they're very excited because they have her commitment, and she's got an enormous amount of respect, not only here in the state, but actually throughout the country, and her work at UConn. So we're going in a good direction with that. We feel really strongly about that. I'm not going to forget that question in the back, by the way. I just want to get through a couple more things on education. So we're talking about the expansion of UConn and downtown Waterbury. What's happening at Naugatuck Valley Community College is there's a $40 million investment into Founders Hall, and that's going to be an allied health center. So there's two major shortages here in Connecticut for employment opportunities. One of them is in manufacturing, and one of them is in allied health. And so what we're going to do is we've got a career academy high school that we built and opened 3 years ago that has a hospital wing on the 3rd floor that's magnificent, and we have a factory on the 1st floor that's magnificent. So we're getting our kids accustomed at age 13 to think about what's next and recognizing clearly that some of our kids, half of our kids, may or may not be able to be in an opportunity to go to a college, but we can give them a career path if they so desire. So that's why we built the Career Academy. That's why we put a factory in there, because we're trying to find, our factory owners are screaming for help. They can't get help anymore. We're trying to get our young people interested in that field, and we're being very successful at it, by the way. And of course, the allied health field. Talking to the president of Naugatuck Valley, her reaching out to same areas in Waterbury Hospital and other health institutions, there is a huge shortage for healthcare workers, and so this building is now being renovated into an allied health center. So that's a good story. I don't want to leave Post out because Bob Morose is here, and we've worked very closely with Post University as well. We continue to hope that there's going to be an opportunity for Post University to occupy some space in downtown Waterbury. It may or may not happen. Whether it happens or not, we still continue to support Post. It's a great learning institution in the city, and we have a strong relationship with the president. So we're excited about that. Other work we did with Naugatuck Valley, by the way, is we built a new bus stop up there and sidewalks for the students up there. And that was a big deal for the students because they were walking along Chase Parkway in the roadway to get to the school. Daisy, who is the president, and I met, and we decided that the city would join a venture with the Naugatuck Valley and that we would split the costs of building the sidewalks. And we really saved a lot of money because our city workers built the sidewalks. Instead of going out to bid and hiring a company, we're using our own city workers, our own city equipment, and our own city staff. By the way, we have 4 masons on our payroll, and they and our public works people built the sidewalks, and we're going to do even more. I think we built 900 feet last year. We're going to do another 900 feet this year. So it's a great partnership, and it gets people involved, especially up in that side of town. One of the things that I'm really proud about, going back to downtown Waterbury, is we got this Waterbury Next initiative going on. And from the time when I was deputy police chief, I was so frustrated because we couldn't get the funding to tear that Prospect Street ramp garage down, which was an enormous eyesore in the city and a blighted piece of property. And fortunately, we were very successful in getting that removed this year. Now that that is gone, we're awaiting some development opportunities. We're not sure what's going to go on that site yet, but we own and control the destiny of that property, and that's what's really important. And we acquired the North Main Street property, which was the old Cena's bowling alley. So that is one big parcel of land right now. We're proud of that. And so the next thing is you've heard probably a lot about what's going on down on Freight Street. The Freight Street corridor has been pointed out as probably one of the most unique opportunities for the city of Waterbury to grow. So Freight Street has long been abandoned. It's a magnificent brownfield. And of course, Northeast Utilities, now Eversource, is there on the north side of Freight Street. And then you have that big factory building that once was a brass factory and then is now, there's 19 different stores in there. And while that's great, then there's some great stores in there and some really good job opportunities. The building is pretty blighted, so we have plans to try to help the landlord along with that. And then next door to that is a place called EWR, which has been abandoned for 20 years, hasn't paid $1 in tax revenue or water bills or any bills in 20 years because the owner died tragically in a plane crash shortly after buying the property, and the family has been very difficult to deal with as far as what's next for the property. All those properties, including Eversource, have some level of environmental contamination. We have currently all kinds of assessments going on these properties. We have access agreements signed by the landlords. We are in there studying the properties now. Where will the money come from? We've got great interest so far in private developers as well as federal EPA in Boston, right? We're in part of Region 1, which is Boston headquarters for EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, right? And then we also have great interest in the development of the property from Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection and Connecticut Department of Economic Development because it's a big piece of land. It's right off the highway. It is flat as this floor. It is contaminated, but you know what? The preliminary tests have come back that albeit every piece of property in Waterbury, by the way, has some level of contamination, but this property is so far not as contaminated as some had said it was, which really inhibited any sort of vision for development in this area forever. So we're really proud of the fact that we've kind of worked with Eversource. Remember I said that collaboration with UConn? Well, we've met with the head of Eversource here in Connecticut, who embraced us and said, wow, we're really happy the city is interested in doing something on Freight Street. We met with all the landlords of the properties that I just described on Freight Street. We met with Connecticut DOT, Department of Transportation, and coordinating with them. And so we have a vision and we have a plan that's very early, but one thing we have is a lot of interest from private development money. And what federal officials want to see before they fund a project is they want to see that there's going to be skin in the game, not only from the municipality that's looking for the funding, but they also want to see some sort of a plan. And they know that, look, I can't look in a crystal ball and tell you for sure what's going to happen down on Freight Street, except that I will tell you for sure that the amount of people that are interested in doing something on Freight Street is unprecedented. And I've only been here for 4 years as the mayor, but I can tell you I spent my whole life in the police department, and I've never seen people coming into this city like they are now, looking for opportunities to develop. So we're proud of that. And one big reason for that, you guys, is that the city of Waterbury now has the highest bond rating we've ever had. So we went from junk bond status in 2001 to AA- in 2016. We just got raised in 2013. That's huge news for people investing into any city. Now, unfortunately, today, the news broke for the city of Bridgeport, and they have a negative outlook. That's not a good picture to paint, because investors, if they're going to invest their money into a city or town, they want to feel like there's a good outlook for that investment, correct? So I feel bad about Bridgeport because I know they're going through some problems down there, but I feel really good about Waterbury because our rating is the highest it's ever been, and more importantly, we have a stable/positive outlook, and this is what people look at when they're investing money. So we're really, really proud of that. The next thing I'm really proud of, you guys, and I talk about all these things because if you don't grow the grand list in this city, and I'm assuming you all know what this means, but you have to grow the grand list so that you create revenue stream for the city of Waterbury so we don't have to keep raising taxes on the property owners of the city of Waterbury. So the more property you have to tax, the easier the burden is on the taxpayer. So we were very, very proud to get involved with the Waterbury Industrial Commons, which was formerly the Chase Brass site. So Senator Murphy was able to secure a $15 million grant to clean that property. It was 600,000 square feet of building, and I don't know if you can get your head around that, but that's a lot of building. 200,000 of that building was so far gone that we tore it down. The other 400,000, we refurbished the property. And currently housed in that 400,000 square feet are several different companies, one of which is a company called Levada that is established out of Finland. And I'm sure that you all know what MRI imaging is. And inside that MRI is the superconductor copper wire that actually makes the MRI imaging possible. Levada is the single largest super semiconductor in the world. So the copper that comes out of this factory in Waterbury is used in 85% of the MRIs that are in the entire world, not just the United States of America. We're thrilled to have this company in Waterbury. We just signed a long-term lease with them, and they're a major employer, and they pay a lot of money, by the way. And so we're thrilled to have them. And there's 3 other companies in that 400,000 square feet facility that pay rent, because we own it, to the city of Waterbury. And not only that, but they're major employers for the city. And we're proud of that because that was an abandoned factory for years. Next, where I said the 200,000 square feet that we tore down, we just sold that 10 acres of land that property sat on to a company called King Industries, who is investing $50 million into that site. And that site will be the home of 150 to 200 jobs, and also 5 separate structures will be built on that site. So when I talk about growing the grand list, that's all the things that are so important to a city's future. And when we go in front of the bond rating houses every year like we did recently, Those are the things that they look at when they raise or lower your bond rating. So if your bond rating is high, you get to borrow money cheaper. If your bond rating is low, your interest rate is very, very high. So the higher your bond rating, the better off it is for a city to invest in its infrastructure. So we're happy about that. We also have a new development going on at the corner of Thomaston and Huntington Avenue. There was a 200,000 square foot factory there that Cumberland Farms bought the whole area, deconstructed the factory, and are building this Cumberland Farms / retail center there. Amongst other things, besides Cumberland Farms, there will be a drugstore, either like a Rite Aid or a CVS or something like that, and then there's going to be other businesses in there as well. And that is the key to some of the issues that we're talking about. How do we bring more businesses into Waterbury? One of the problems we've had, we've brought 30 new businesses into Waterbury over the last 4 years and created 1,200 jobs, and they're real jobs, and we can point to every one of them. The problem is we're running out of space. There's no more empty, or there's very few empty buildings left. And so what we need to do is continue to focus very strongly on these brownfields, like Freight Street, Mill Street, North Main Street. We need to get those projects, we need to get those buildings down, those old factories that have been abandoned for decades. We need to get them down, we need to get them clean, and then need to get them shovel ready so that we can then attract opportunities for more businesses. Now we do have significant amount of office and commercial space that's empty in downtown Waterbury. And we believe strongly that once we start packaging and marketing this Yukon expansion, and hopefully, as I mentioned, Post will have students living in downtown Waterbury as well, that this will be the beginning of people willing to invest more and more. So you might have more small restaurants or coffee shops or little bars or boutiques or who knows what, but at least it'll be something better than nothing. And so that's the direction that we've been trying to travel in. So we're moving on to the other couple of different things going on in town. Over there on the west side of town, near Spartan's Restaurant across the street, was a brownfield that had been contaminated for, I don't know how many years. Spartan's used to be there originally, and they moved across the street. That place was a brownfield. We worked really hard with the state to get that cleaned up, and now you can see that they're building that new gas station / store / whatever on that side of town. One of the things we've also tried to do, in addition, obviously, to bringing in business in Waterbury and growing the grand list in Waterbury, is to address some of the major issues of neglect in downtown Waterbury and Waterbury throughout. One of the areas of huge neglect that the city was unable to support is our park system. And we've got some of the most magnificent parks in Connecticut right here in Waterbury. We've put incredible resources into Fulton Park. Many of you may be familiar with the Fulton Park Warming Hut. There's a group up there led by Mike Salvio, and they've really embraced the city in a very unique way, and we've embraced them. And that is another difference in what's happening. It's one thing to sit around a room and talk and collaborate. It's a whole nother thing to act. So we told the Fulton Park folks, if you come out and support the cleanup efforts, if you come out and do the things you say you're going to do, then the city will follow suit by giving you the resources and will provide all the workforce that you can handle to bring Fulton Park back. Now, Fulton Park is on the National Historic Registry because it was built by a fellow by the name of Olmsted. Well, Mr. Olmsted built Central Park, and that's why this is such a magnificent piece of property and well known to people in that world of parks. So the city has invested so much in-kind services with that Fulton Park group, but we've also sought out and been very successful in getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money. And so we rebuilt Fulton Park, and we're also rebuilding many other parks in this city that have been let go. So one of the big initiatives, and we talked to all the neighborhood groups, is in addition to fixing the basketball rims and the swing set, would you just bring back the bathrooms? There's nowhere to go to the bathroom. We bring our kids to the park and we're going behind trees. So I have to tell you, one of the things I did in the spring of 2012 when I first got elected is I asked my chief of staff, Joe Gary, to bring me around to all of our parks. And I had been in them. Some of them I had been in them when I was a kid, and others I had been in when I was a policeman. But what was strikingly astounding to me was the condition that they were in, and they were very, very poorly kept. Why? How did it happen? If you talk to the city workers, they'll tell you that when the oversight board came in, they cut the park department from 140 employees to 47. And so they just didn't have the manpower to keep up with the parks. And we have lots of acres of parks. So that's a legitimate explanation to some degree. If you talk to the neighborhood groups, they would say, well, I don't think we totally agree with that because the last time I saw anybody pushing a lawnmower in that park was 2 years ago. So you hear the other side of the story, right? But at the end of the day, you learn in this job that if you want to focus on what happened back then, instead of what you can do today and tomorrow, well, you probably should be in a different job. So the truth is, we got over all that nonsense. We work closely with the city boards, the park board and the board of aldermen, and we've taken a lot of the funding that we've been able to save in other areas and in starting to reinvest in the parks. What has that done? Basically, it's been a great return on the investment in the sense that the people who live in those areas, again, are reinvesting themselves into the parks. So they're actually helping keep the parks clean. We are providing those bathrooms, by the way. They are about $100,000 each. We started with Library Park and Martin Luther King Park, the Brass Mill Park. I can't read it up from here, but I think Hopeville Park and the Rivera Hughes Park. So we put 5 new bathrooms in over the last 2 years, and they're very easy to keep. So guess what? At dusk, we have an ordinance. You're not supposed to be in the park. At dusk, the technology is that those parks just lock up. They're alarmed, and so if anybody tampers with them or vandalizes them, we will have an opportunity to respond quickly. And the neighborhood groups have been really supportive because now they see that we are not only buying and investing in bathrooms, but we've built basketball courts. We've helped with the tennis courts. Do we have a long way to go? When you neglect a park system like Waterbury's for 30 to 50 years, you got a long way to go. Just think about if you didn't cut your grass for a couple of years. So we're working, but we're going in a really strong direction. And we're really happy about that because the neighborhood groups have been really responding positively to that. And that means that the little kids are in the parks again. And that we're happy to see that. Now, if you look around at Bunker Hill Park, that park is so crowded you can't even get near it. And that's a kind of a pain in the neck for some of the residents in the immediate vicinity, but it's awesome because you see kids out there, especially when school's out, all the time. East Mountain Park is constantly full. And what's great about Bunker Hill Park and East Mountain Park is that the people who live in those areas and belong to those neighborhood groups are taking care of those parks, and that is a very commendable thing. So you don't necessarily need those 100 more employees to take care of the parks. What you need is the employees of the city who will work closely with the neighbors and say, can you keep an eye on this tonight because I know there's going to be something going on. If you see anything suspicious, please call the police. Or we need the employees to say, listen, on Earth Day or Cleanup Day or any day you want to come in and help clean up this park, I'd be happy to have your help. And that's what we're seeing. And by the way, who's doing that stuff? You guys. We're getting a lot of kids involved, which really makes me feel good. I mean, kids meaning grade school kids and high school kids. But more and more we're seeing young professional adults get involved. And so we're really happy about that because really, honestly, to run government and to run government efficiently and to feel good about running government, you need to have people who want to volunteer and be involved. And it sets such a good message to everyone. Your brothers and sisters, your children, if you have any, someday your future children. It's a good thing when you go into a park and donate your time, or anywhere else for that matter in the city. So we're really, we're proud about the direction we're going in. We're proud about the accomplishments that we've made. We're frustrated about some other things. Don't misunderstand me. Everything in government takes so long. Forever. So when I was the police chief, it was a big change because you're used to, when you're the police chief and you have 300 police officers working for you, you're used to saying, well, let's do this tonight, and we'll do that initiative tomorrow night, and let's, and everything gets done really quickly. In government, everything is a negotiation, which is fine. And once you get through the negotiation and you get the approvals, and then it's still just a long time before things happen. So one of the things that we're going to try to improve on, hopefully, is try to improve the time frame. So this is all that's happened, and there's a lot more, but in 4 years. Really, I would have loved to have been able to do all that in 1 year, but you can't. And you learn quickly that you have to realize that you just can't get things done in government overnight. And that's probably not a bad thing either. But when it comes to simple things like what you're seeing on this screen, it does become frustrating because it takes so long to get things done. So we've got 4 more years in office. The city of Waterbury changed the mayor's term from 2 years to 4 years, so we have 4 more years. So I figured this way. We got a lot of things done the last 4 years, and now we have 4 more years, and we've got so many good things in the funnel. And some of these things, by the way, you'll be reading about in a very short period of time. And a lot of the things that I've spoken about are those things. So development opportunities, businesses moving into town, private investors investing into downtown Waterbury. These are all the things that are happening right now. I wish I could tell you about them directly. And if we meet again, which I'd love to, in another 3 or 6 months, we'll be able to talk about those things. And I think you'll be really, really happy, because it really does focus on the things we're talking about. Why can't we talk specifics? Negotiations for property, landlords. There's ongoing negotiations for pricing, environmental assessments, as we talked about, and those are all the things that impact pricing and what people think. I think my house is worth $1 million. Most people think it's worth about $150,000. So that's what happens, So we can't announce things before they're happening because we don't want to hurt the potential investors who are trying to, put a deal together. So that's where that's at. Now, that's a lot of talking. I try to go as fast as I could. To your question in the back about trying to attract businesses, and it's a much different climate, sir, than in downtown Middlebury than it is in downtown Waterbury. I think we would all recognize that. But your thought is very much correct. We are very, very interested in working with young professional people, and we have what's called the Waterbury Development Corporation, and trying to get these young entrepreneurs and business-minded folks in to talk about opportunities in downtown Waterbury, and we would love to be able to expand upon those conversations into meaningful business opportunities. And so we've been really successful at some things. Like we brought a pharmaceutical company into Waterbury. That was huge. I mean, you wouldn't believe what's going on up that place. And we brought all these manufacturers into Waterbury, including King Industries. And we're working with current manufacturers on expanding their opportunities, because guess what's happening, folks? Manufacturing, while everyone said, okay, Waterbury is the brass city, and we were. We were the single largest producer of brass in the world, mostly in the form of munitions and buttons. We supplied most of the munitions in World War I and World War II and all those conflicts in between. But then the wars ended, and the demand for brass changed in some ways to plastics and other metals. And then we were hit with labor, big labor was fighting with the owners of the brass companies. Ultimately, what happened is they all closed. And then they became 100-acre pieces of property that were brown and abandoned. So that was the 60s and the 70s and the very early 80s. So everybody said, well, what are you going to do now? You're the brass city. What are you going to call yourself? Well, we're still the brass city as far as I'm concerned. People don't recognize we have in this immediate area over 100 manufacturers. 100 manufacturers that employ anywhere from 2 or 3 people to 300 people. We have 2 of the biggest battery companies in America right in Waterbury. Clydell Manufacturing and H&T. What do they make? They make the casings that batteries are in. So they could be this big in your watch or this big in your generator behind your house. So we have those companies here. We have other companies here that do all kinds of metal work. We have a huge aerospace business here. We have huge automotive industry work here, airline industry work here. You know, there's so much happening here. When I started to run for office, I had very little knowledge about manufacturing. I never worked in a shop. My grandparents all did, but I never did. And so I made it a point to tour the manufacturers in the city of Waterbury and even gone outside the city of Waterbury. And the one thing that I was amazed at was the condition of the factories. Because I remember my grandparents saying, oh, you don't want to work in the factory, or we're going to work 12-hour days and you're going to lose your finger and it's dirty and it's dusty. And yeah, it was back in those days. It's not today. These shops are clean and quiet and mostly computer driven, by the way. And they pay great wages and benefits. And the median age of a factory worker, by the way, in Waterbury and Greater Waterbury, 56 years old. So we recognize that one of the most important things that government can do, the city can do right now, is to build a workforce that will fill those positions that are becoming vacant as we stand here and sit here today. So we're working along those guys. And that's why we built the Career Academy with the factory inside. And we supported the Naugatuck Valley Advanced Manufacturing Center, which is a magnificent facility. So we're literally training our students now who have an interest in manufacturing from the age of 13 all the way through. And not the least, I must mention, is Caner Technical High School, which does incredible work, not only in manufacturing, but other vocational fields as well. The reason why Waterbury decided to build their own high school, Votech High School, if you will, is because we only get a certain number of seats at Caner, and we had such a demand for those seats that our own kids were not getting into those seats and becoming very, very frustrated. And so the city of Waterbury, Board of Education and Board of Aldermen made a decision about 10 years ago to go ahead and build this magnificent career academy. I would love to invite any of you to that place who haven't been there, who would like to see it. It is a state-of-the-art high school. I think it's probably the top 5 in the state right now. But more importantly, the students are screened carefully. You have to want to learn to go to the Career Academy. You just can't go to the Career Academy. You have to want to learn. Just like you have to apply to get into Caner Tech, you have to apply to get into the Career Academy. Now, we try to be, and we are very diverse, and we try to bring all segments of our demographics of the city in as students in the Career Academy. But here's what's amazing up there. They're not leaving. They're staying. So I predict next year in June will be our first graduating class. I predict that we are going to see a graduation rate that is going to be amazing. And by the way, what's our graduation rate today? About 65%. Not very good. We admit it. But we have such a diverse population, people coming and going all the time. That's really what impacts that number. Well, people aren't coming and going in the Career Academy. People are starting as freshmen, and they're staying. And we're really proud of that because our teachers are doing an unbelievable job of giving these students opportunities. and the opportunities and the apprenticeship programs and the internship programs are working. They're expensive, but they're working. And that's what we need, right? We need a population of people who are going to work to have a strong middle class, to continue to have a strong city. And that's what it's about. And it doesn't happen overnight. So, Stephanie.
We do have some questions that were pre-submitted, and the first question is a two-part question. What do you, Mr. Mayor, consider to be the administration's biggest accomplishment thus far and biggest struggle thus far?
So biggest accomplishments is easy. We just talked about that. Job creation, grand list growth, getting people excited about their city again, getting people to volunteer and be stakeholders, and having a feeling of belonging, right? Another big accomplishment in Waterbury, and I'll take credit for this because I can, is we're safe. This is a very safe city, knock on wood. Something will happen tonight. We are a city over 100,000 with the lowest crime rate in the entire eastern seaboard, Waterbury, Connecticut. It's a great story. Thank you. And you know, I'll tell you, and a big reason for that is, and our youth crime is the lowest in the state. And that's a great story to tell too, because I hate it when I have to do this, but I have to do it. But if you go on the news every day, right? You listen to the news probably in the morning when you get ready for work, and in the evening before you go to sleep. And what are the top stories? Who got killed in this city? Who got killed in that city? Who got robbed in this city? And hey, we're a city, and we have crime, but we don't have anywhere near the problems that some of these other cities have. It's a good story to tell. It's a good story. Some of it is we're a victim of our own success. So what's happening? We've seen a huge influx of students coming into Waterbury over the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, we've taken in more than 750 new students. Where are they coming from? Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven. A lot of them are coming from other countries too, primarily Latin America. But when you ask the parents, why are you here? Why are you coming here from New Haven, which has a great school system, by the way, and Hartford and Bridgeport, and they'll be sure to tell you. Because you have housing that we can afford to live in. I can let my child play outside in front of the house, and I don't hear gunshots. And guess what? So while I'm so proud of the fact that we're safe, now we're being inundated with this new population, and we're having a very difficult time finding space for them. So, you know, and we also offer very, very, very strong special education programs. So we have a population of students that is just under 19,000 public school kids in Waterbury. And about 20 to 25% of those kids have some special needs, right? It could be something very minor, but it could also be something very significant. The issue with that is it's enormously expensive. So, you know, when you get into specialization like speech pathology, audiology, autism, and things associated, it's very, very expensive to make sure that these children get what they need and what they're entitled to, by the way. So we have a challenge on our hands. And so the challenge is, how do we continue to provide a quality of education and afford to be able to? And then the other major challenge is how do we control our healthcare costs? So our healthcare costs is, we've got about 12,500 people on our insurance plan. Who are they? They're city workers, 4,000. And then all those other people are retirees or active and retirees' children that we own until they reach the age of 26. So what happens? So healthcare, right, is the largest growing, out of control, craziest thing you ever saw in your life. So we used to pay, 10 years ago, $50 million a year for health care. 10 years ago. We're paying $116 million this year. 116. Why? People are living longer, right? That's a good thing. So they're living longer. Cancers are being treated much more successfully, right? The fatality rate is dropping. Transplants. People are getting hearts and lungs, and, they're expensive. Every transplant's about $1 million. So that's what happens in a city like Waterbury when you're self-insured. And so we are now trying everything we can think of to try to control healthcare costs. And I can tell you, it is definitely the biggest single challenge. It's even more difficult than education, because education you can read, and you can get a feel for how much the budget is going to change over a year or two. You can pretty much project what's happening, except when you bring in 750 new kids, it makes it more difficult. But you can feel, you can read it. The problem with healthcare is that we have a set of twins that I'm so grateful for that are alive and well, but that one set of twins costs us $1.4 million because of their challenges. So you take those issues and then you bring them into the regular field of healthcare, right? The normal things that are covered for normal wear and tear on your body. And then the hospitals are charging incredible amounts of money for these procedures, and the overnight stays are 10 times more than they used to be, and all the services that go along with it. So it's really hard. And so today, I met with the president of Yale, Marna Borgstrom, who is this remarkable woman who started out in Yale Hospital as a registered nurse like 35 years ago, and she's the president and CEO today. Good story. But I've known Marna for a number of years, and and I said to her, Marna, you're killing us. You're breaking our backs with these fees and these surgeries and these procedures and these treatments, and how are we gonna survive? And her answer is, Neil, the Affordable Health Care Act, while it's great for some, it's extraordinarily difficult for us to manage. And the federal and state are reducing the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements, right? So they're still taking care of people, right? They're not saying, oh, sorry, you can't come here because you don't have any money. They have to take care of them. And then so what happens is you get a cost shift, right? So instead of getting the money from the federal government for the Medicare and the Medicaid reimbursement, they're passing it along to us for these procedures. And that's the real story. And so stay tuned, because sooner or later there's going to be an explosion, and when people just can't pay anymore. And I don't know what the answer is, because I'm not a hospital administrator, nor am I a finance expert. But I can tell you, just as a layman, in learning an awful lot about these things over the last 4 years, there is no way that Waterbury or any municipality, and the larger you are, the more exposure you have, more people on your plan, are going to be able to survive. It's nearly impossible. So those are the biggest challenges.
Thank you.
The next question, Mr. Mayor. When thinking about Waterbury's future, what gets you the most excited?
People. You guys. Honestly. I tell this story. So when I was the police chief, my daughter was in 3rd grade at Blessed Sacrament School, and she came out crying one day, and I said, what the heck's the matter with you? She used to always, every day, come out laughing, kidding, joking around, trying to figure out whose house she was going to. And she's crying, and I said, what's the matter? And she said, oh, Josh D's father said that you're a terrible police chief. And I said, really? I said, well, what are you crying about? I don't like him talking that way. And I'm like, oh my God, please, Maggie, calm down. And one of the things that was hard for me in making a decision to run for mayor is because when you're mayor, you're much less popular than you are when you're police chief. When you're police chief, people are afraid of you. When you're mayor, people love to debate with you and argue with you. And so I said to her, when, just 5 years ago, when she was 9, I said, remember that day you came out of school crying, blah, blah, yeah. I said, well, if I run for mayor, you better develop a pretty thick skin pretty quick, because right away, about half of the population may or may not embrace what you're doing, and then when you try to raise taxes, then you're really unpopular. And so, do you have the stomach for this? And so, she said she did, and the other family members said they did. But, you get excited because you know you can make a difference. You know if you really work hard, you can make a difference. You know, you've got 15 elected aldermen in this city. 10 are on the majority side and 5 are on the minority side. And I believe that the last 4 years we've been able to work really well together in getting the city's agenda to push forward. And I believe that the next minority leader is here, so send a little message. But I believe very strongly that we're going to be in a good place to continue moving our agenda forward. And the reason I ran for mayor, honestly, there was a group of people who asked me to run for mayor back in 2009, and I didn't do it. And I was sorry I didn't do it because not much happened between 2009 and 2011, to be honest with you. And I really didn't want to take on the incumbent mayor because I was the police chief and he was my boss. But I have to say, in all honesty, I felt that we could do more and we could try a lot harder. And I felt that we could engage more people. And it's hard being the mayor, though, honestly, it really is. And he was the mayor for 10 years, and he did a good job, but it wears on you. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. You know, I've only been here 4 years, and it's hard. It's hard work. And no matter where you go, you know, people will ask you questions and complain to you or compliment you, but it's still there, you know. So I don't find myself going out as much as I used to because I just don't want to hear it. But I do find myself feeling good about fireside chats like tonight because when you see young, energetic, eager, willing people who want to serve in government or volunteer to be on local boards or host an event like tonight, it makes you feel really good. So for me, it's a very rewarding experience. I had an incredible police career that was very rewarding as well. But this is an opportunity where you can do a whole lot more as mayor than you could as police chief. And so we feel that we've done a whole lot in 4 years, and we feel we can do a whole lot more in the next 4 years.
Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of us here tonight who work downtown. So what do you view as the biggest obstacle for downtown revitalization?
One of the major obstacles, I think, is the perception issue that downtown Waterbury is unsafe. So I just got done telling you how safe it was. And statistically, it is safe. But if you walk by the Green on your way to the Y or anywhere else, you'll see groups of people, right, who are hanging out. Some of them are panhandling, some of them are not. But some of them are just kind of scary just to look at. That's what I hear anyways. That's what I hear. So I can't get a big tractor trailer truck and load everybody up and bring them to Bridgeport. I might want to, but I can't. I can't build a fence around the borders of Waterbury. Donald Trump would build a wall maybe. But trying to improve the perception of downtown Waterbury is a challenge. One of the things that I've been really trying to address, and so many years ago, there was a group that brought in four significant halfway houses into downtown Waterbury. 2 of them are on Central Avenue, one is on West Main Street and Meadow, and one is over on Pine Street. Now, I'm a big second chance reentry guy, so I'm probably a little bit more liberal-minded than some people in that area. However, there's about 268 beds, okay? So folks get out of incarceration and they're sent to these halfway houses and they're supposed to go out and try to find employment opportunities. But guess what happens? There are none because people are very, very reluctant to hire people who are ex-offenders. So what do? They go and hang out because they can't find a job. Or in some cases, may not want to find a job, right? So we deal with that issue. So I'm really trying hard to figure out what the next step is and trying to find a suitable location to build almost a campus environment for that exact population, but a campus environment that would not be on top of the Green and would be in a section of the city that can support that. And more importantly, in that campus, I believe that we can open up a school and we can start the remediation and remedial training and rehabilitation process that these folks need to become productive members of society. We have them here. You can't walk around like this. You just can't, because they're not going to disappear. We have to figure out ways to bring them back. And by the way, there are ways to bring them back. Most of these people are substance abusers, people who ran into problems with drugs, got into all kinds of issue, found themselves incarcerated, found themselves coming out to no opportunity. So that's what we're trying to do. We have some, I think, some pretty good plans in the works that might make something like that happen. That's one thing. Two things, buses on the green. So, hot topic, buses on the green. With the buses, with the pulse point, the central pulse point being the green, the congestion, the pollution, the noise, the ridership, it's congested, and that's being polite. We are very much looking for other alternatives, but those alternatives come with a price tag. And so when you take the pulse point out of the green, the elderly complain because, well, if you put me down at the train station or anywhere else, how am I going to get to my building on the green? So we do have a lot of elderly population that live on and around the green. So we have to recognize that. So we're looking at every alternative you could possibly look at to find an alternative solution to buses on the green. And we feel that very strongly about it. Now, the last time someone tried to talk about taking buses off of the green, it didn't go well. And we're going to try it again, but I shouldn't say we're going to try it. We're waiting. We have a couple of studies being done, and we're looking for alternatives, right? One alternative is, remember that piece of property we talked about on Prospect Street that abuts North Main Street? That's a main thoroughfare. You know, maybe we use that as some sort of an area. Maybe not. Maybe we get more creative and look south a little bit, over towards Bank Street. So on the corner of Bank Street and Grant Street, you know, where the bus station, the bus drop-off Peter Pan place is, and the police training center is there. We own all that. City owns all that. Maybe we look to make that a pulse point as well. So maybe we move the pulse points so that not everybody's at one pulse point. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe we take some more people off of the West Main, East Main corridor and we use the Grand Street as the corridor. Don't know, but we're working hard to try to find a solution. Let me ask you guys, what do you think are the biggest challenges in downtown? Yes?
Sir, Brandon Hudson, I opened a business on Main Street actually to take care of the radio system, so I appreciate the city choosing us to do that. For me, it's seeing the foot traffic not there for the shops. And I don't know if a question made it, but one of the thoughts is, in addition to foot traffic, there's a lot of things standing in the way. The buses, condition, the perception. But what I also found was online. There is no online presence for a lot of that business and residents. I looked for a space to rent, so it'd be right across from my shop, and I saw the Apothecary article, the building that did the lofts. When I looked for an ad to see if those were for rent, I saw nothing. I come from Dallas. It's a little big city, down in Texas. But you see when something's sold out. I hear there's 36 units and they're always sold out in downtown. That needs to be blatant. That people are here and they're not moving. Because when you see that, then it draws people in. And you get that foot traffic on the web, and you don't have to fix the sidewalk for them. You know, they can come and see the shops, they can come and see the places for rent, they can come and see the development. So that's what I would say is the challenge and a potential solution.
I think you're spot on. I really do. Do you guys agree with me, that, going back just a second, that there is a perception issue in downtown Waterbury for safety? Yeah. Have you been approached by panhandlers? Yeah. I know. I got a real problem with that, especially as a cop, you know. You just want to do something stupid, but, you know, it's driving me crazy, and I met with the big city mayors just 2 weeks ago, and it's their number one issue as well. And it's always, you know, around the theaters and things like that, where you're trying to bring people in from the suburbs, and they get really nervous really quick when someone approaches them and asks them for $1, and they're very intimidating. And so we are adopting, and so are the other cities, really strict ordinances that is really going to be to the detriment of these panhandling folks. And so stay tuned for that. But I'm glad at least we're on the same page with that. And to your point, sir, about the 36 units that are rented in downtown, you know, those are market rate units for the most part. And by the way, in a city of Waterbury with our median income, there's not a huge difference between what's called affordable housing rates and market rate, because, you know, we're kind of challenged population. But Prague is the owner of those buildings, and he's done an unbelievable job investing almost all of his money into those units with a really nice return on that investment. And we use him as the example. When we have investors come in, they're in his building all the time, talking to his tenants and saying, why do you live here? And it's a great opportunity to get people excited about investing. There is going to be huge investments in downtown Waterbury in this calendar year. You can take that to the bank. And that's going to be really, really good, you guys, because they're going to focus on student housing and housing, market rate housing, and some affordable housing. We're not afraid of the affordable stuff because it's who you rent to. I want to rent to somebody who's struggling and poor, who wants to go out and work. I want that. I don't want to rent to somebody who is struggling and poor and has no desire whatsoever to go to work. So, you know, you got to be careful how you say it, right? I mean, I usually get in trouble for saying the wrong thing, but you know, the truth is we're trying to do the right thing. And the right thing is to bring the right people into downtown Waterbury. And I'm all for helping people of all walks of life. But I'm really supportive of helping people who want to better themselves. And that's really what we're gearing all of our attention towards.
Mr. Mayor, what's the best advice you received when you were first starting your career?
In the mayor's office?
In law enforcement and the mayor's office.
Well, my father would say, you don't need to arrest anybody. You'll make a lot more friends if you don't arrest people. And he was right, by the way. And I really enjoyed the law enforcement field because I had a great career, and most of it was spent going after really bad people. And it was rewarding when you catch somebody who did something awful to someone else, and you can knock on the victim's family door and say, we solved the crime. And then I started moving in a different direction when I became deputy chief. I started thinking about how you could do things differently instead of the old guns and bullets and the handcuffs and all that, which is the way I was brought up in law enforcement, is try to direct your attention toward the kids, the little ones. You know, those little kids that are so poor that they wear the same clothes to school every day, and their parents can't afford to give them a pair of socks. And so you try to figure out what you can do in a different way, untraditional law enforcement. My critics used to say he thinks he's a social worker now. And, you know, he's more focused on that than he is on, you know, the traditional law enforcement. And I really was. And we created this police activity league, which today serves about 4,400 kids every year. And we really are a safety net for the most challenged of the challenged. And we bought this campus in 2005. Our goal was to raise about $750,000, and the community came together, and the corporations of the community came together, major corporations like Webster Bank and the hospitals, and they saw the impacts, the positive impacts we were having on these kids. And instead of raising $700,000, we raised about $2 million. And that enabled us to build this campus up there in one of the worst neighborhoods of the city, and we're really proud of it. We're proud of it because it's got direct links to why the crime rate in Waterbury is so low and why the kids in Waterbury do better than they do in some of the other more challenged cities. However, having said that, you guys, we got a long way to go. You know, we've got poor people here. I mean, people who, you know, really are stuck, right? They're from very young parents, some of these kids, and the parents are from different countries where the culture is extremely different than what we're used to, most of us, right? Where they start having children at a very tender age, and then it's the cycle, right? So it just keeps going. So the key to that, I'm convinced, is education. So we're going into the pre-K, the K, all the way through 12, and we're trying to show our children that there's a different way, that's a better way. Now, that's all good. The second challenge of that, though, is the parents. You know, it depends where you come from as to how much parents value education. So, if you come from Albania or Macedonia or Kosovo, and you come into Waterbury, I can tell you that their parents value education. Those children are in the front of every class, they're at the top of every class, and they're the salutatorians and the valedictorians in a lot of classes. Why? Because their parents grew up in such difficult times where wars were happening and people were being killed in front of them, and living in villages in the mountains with not even electricity or toilets or anything. When they come here, it is the promised land. And the parents know that if they educate their children, they're going to have a better life than they had. And they believe in it. And by the way, they're very strict. They're very strict. So, you know, you walk into Albanian house and the son brings a note home from school that he did something wrong, you're better off leaving. You're better off leaving. So, you know, and then you have other demographics, right, which we're not going to point out, but where education in their background wasn't as important as it should or could have been, and so they're learning themselves. So you have to have the patience to bring them along so that they can see how important it is that their child go to school and learn. And that's a big, big job to do that. And listen, our graduation rates have gone up 5 points over the last 4 years. I don't think I can take credit for that. However, I do think organizations like PAL and the YMCA and Girls Inc. and the Boys and Girls Club and Waterbury Youth Services, those places are all making a difference. And I think that when the parents see their children learning, most cases they know more than the parents do, then I think they're saying to themselves, oh my God, this is actually something that we should start paying a little more attention to. Pretty tough though. And by the way, you don't see those challenges in suburban areas. You just don't. And that's, you know, always been my argument about funding urban school districts to suburban school districts. Our challenges are so much different, both socioeconomic challenges and, of course, the populations that we deal with compared to the suburban atmosphere. And I know because I went to school here, and I went to school and graduated from Nanuag High School in Woodbury. So big differences leaving Waterbury in 5th grade and going out there. So firsthand, I experienced it.
Last question. As you can see, the young professionals of the Waterbury area are very interested in getting more involved. What are some of the things that you'd like to see the young professionals get involved with to make change in Waterbury?
More of this? I'll do this anytime. I love this. I do. And by the way, you guys are all really nice tonight. You could ask me really hard questions if you want. And you could complain too if you want, because I'm used to that. But this is really important. So I'm hoping that this fireside chat tonight gets a kickoff on your social media opportunities, and I'm hoping that whether you like or not the message, that you'll say, hey, at least he came down here and talked to us and took the time. I love this stuff, and I mean it. The best part of this job is I love going to the schools during the day, whether it's grammar, middle, or high school. I just love it. I love going to the neighborhood meetings whenever I can. Whenever I'm invited, I try to go to every neighborhood at least a couple of times a year to listen to people's concerns. I feel that the return on the investment by coming here tonight is even greater because I can see a lot of people who want to get involved. So, well, how can you get involved? You know, we have cities and boards in this town. So if you're a city resident, you're eligible to sit on some cities and boards. And if you're a non-resident, you still are eligible to sit on fewer boards. But, you know, we do have some openings on some of our boards that may be of interest to you. Any of you who are interested, I will give you my card and you can email me and I'll tell you what's there. I actually have a list of some of the openings, and I think that would be a great way to get involved. I think another great way to get involved would be to continue to put the forums like this together and let's talk about opportunities. I mean, they're almost endless, you guys, right? You know, we run a variety of different events almost all year round, like the Gathering. Who's familiar with the Gathering? You know, the Gathering is super cool. We have these Mayor for the Day ceremonies, I don't know, probably 15 or 16 times a year with people from different countries. And Waterbury is one of the most diverse cities in the state, by the way, if not the most diverse. And so John Murray, who writes this newspaper called The Observer, he said to me a couple of years ago, we should have a big picnic for everybody from all these different places who come for their Mayor for the Day. Let's have a big picnic. And so we started talking about it. And then we said, well, if we're going to have a picnic, let's have a parade. And let's invite all the schools to participate. And then let's have booths set up. So you have your booth from Italy, and your booth from Poland, and your booth from Ireland, and your booth from the Dominican, and your booth from Puerto. So we started. In the first year, you guys, we had 60 countries. We had every single grammar, middle, and high school participate in the parade. We had a contest as who had the best float. And we had over 10,000 people in downtown Waterbury on a Saturday afternoon, and that was super cool. We had the best music. Everybody came in their traditional outfits and danced and sang, and it was super cool. Last year was the second annual, and we had about 16 to 20,000 people that showed up. And again, we had every single school participate, and we even invited the Catholic schools to participate, and they did as well. So it was a really cool thing. Those are the things that really make downtown Waterbury a better place to be. We're doing more outdoor things in Library Park. Library Park's a beautiful park. We put a bathroom there, go figure, right? A bathroom, can you imagine? So we have a bathroom now. We're very excited about that. We have a grandstand that was all fallen down that we rebuilt, and it's really nice. And we can have more opportunities for anything to happen. So a lot of use this summer in Library Park. People are starting to recognize, holy cow, we can have a family picnic, or we can host an event. You guys, young professionals, could host an event on a Saturday or a Sunday and bring in music. The city is very supportive of this stuff. We sneak money on the side. Don't tell Alderman Jacomi, but we do. We sneak a little money on this. He's taping me. We sneak a little money on the side to sponsor events like this. And we're very much into doing that. So the Gathering, we're a big supporter of the Gathering. We do that. The Kids Marathon has been a huge success. We applied for a grant through the U.S. Conference of Mayors and got a $125,000 grant. And we've hosted 3 years of Kids Marathon, which is we invite all the kids from all of our schools to get together. Last year we had about 5,000 kids running around the green and down Grand Street. It was awesome. And so we're really trying to develop culture, arts, entertainment, people in downtown Waterbury. And we've been pretty successful at it. We can do more, and we know we can do more. But we need more people to get involved, because it's to do just an event like that, any one of those events requires an enormous amount of work and preparation, so we can use all the help we can get.
Thank you. Now we'd like to welcome up Emery Roth, author of the book
Great. Come on up. Thank you.
It is my honor to
you.
present this to you. I'm delighted to hear you talking so much about education and about the past and the future, because I believe the greatest asset for Waterbury, or one of its greatest assets for the future of Waterbury, is its industrial past and how to connect the past to the future. That is the goal of this book. I was fortunate to be able to photograph in the very last of the old brass mills of American brass. Those photographs are in the book, and the book connects those to all the stories of the whole valley and how Brass Valley came to be. It's my goal to put Brass Valley back on people's lips and have people from all over the valley coming into Waterbury and people from Waterbury visiting the whole valley.
Oh, thank you, sir.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I was telling Mr. Roth earlier, so this region has what's called a Council of Governments, and so it was a Council of Governments that contained 13 cities and towns. And so we were instructed by the state of Connecticut to bring in more towns, as there were too many Council of Governments all over the state. So now we brought in 6 more towns, so the Council of Governments in Waterbury now is 19 cities and towns, and I would venture to guess every single one of you lives in a town that's in that 19-town consortium. I chair the Council of Governments since the new inception of the 19 towns, and so I would invite you not only to get involved in Waterbury, but if you want to learn a little bit more about your particular town and what's going on, have built very good relationships with the leadership of those other 18 towns, and would be happy to refer any of you to the leadership in those towns. I can tell you, small or large, any responsible elected leader or official will welcome anyone, especially young professional people, to participate in government, because although it's always going to be give and take, and your opinion might be different from mine and vice versa, just to have you in a room and have you be part of a discussion is a really good, strong, powerful thing. So if you want to come to Waterbury and get involved, no matter where you live, we're happy to have you. If you want to get involved with your own towns, just let me know and I can hook you up with your leadership if you don't already know who they are. Does anybody have any other questions? I know we went on a little bit longer. I don't know how long we were supposed to go on this fireside chat. I can tell, you probably tell by now, I can talk all night about Waterbury. And I really like to talk about Waterbury. And I talked about the challenges, and I talked about, the demographics, and I talked about, what's happening in local government. But I tell you, another way you can help out, and you can really help out, is to pay attention to what's going on in Hartford. There's a lot of opinions about what's going on in Hartford. And by the way, there's a whole lot of opinions about what's going on in this country. And all you need to do is watch a Republican debate and a Democratic debate, and then you can shut your TV off and try to go to sleep. There's a lot going on right now. In the state of Connecticut, we're in the worst fiscal crisis we've ever been in. Didn't happen overnight. Didn't happen. It's not the responsibility of one governor. It's the responsibility of, in my opinion, the last 3 or 4. The current guy in the seat gets the most heat. Hey, in some cases, he may be deserving of that honor. But in many cases, I do believe that no matter who it is, Democrat, Republican, or Independent, most people get involved to try to help. And so their vision might be different from what we think could be or should be successful. But if you pay attention to what's going on the state side, it has huge impacts on what's going on in Waterbury, because we really depend heavily on state aid. We really do. We depend enormously on municipal aid. It's crucial for Waterbury right now. It's crucial for every city and town. But the larger your city is, with the more challenges, the more you need to rely on the state aid. And of course, when the state is in a fiscal crisis and that aid starts to dissipate, it presents a whole lot of problems for us trying to figure out how to close those gaps. And then obviously I don't need to tell any of you how important it's going to be in the next presidential election. There's a lot of things going on. You know, you really honestly, you really need to pay attention to what's going on in your country, and you need to have a say, and you need to be heard. And as you can tell by what's happening in these primaries so far, you guys are making a huge difference. And I think you should continue to watch that very closely. And, you know, the more you get involved, the more understanding you'll have of how cities and state and federal government is run. You may not be happy about it, but at least you'll have an understanding of the challenges that are out there. And you know, I think everyone really does want to make a positive difference. It's just that right now, I don't know that any single person knows the answers to the very, very complicated problems that we're being faced with at every level of government, from Washington, D.C. to Hartford to Waterbury. So stay tuned and try to get involved if you can. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.